It's not we need nuclear power, we need power, period.
In 2015, the Paris Agreement was signed by 193 countries and the EU. If you look on Wikipedia, you'll see this map of everyone who's ratified or signed the agreement.
You'll see Taiwan listed as one of the parties to the agreements, but that's incorrect.
In the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, 1% of global CO2 emissions go unaccounted for.
1% might not sound like a lot, but it's almost equivalent to Spain's annual emissions. Missing, unaccounted for. Why? Because Taiwan is not represented in the United Nations. Story for another video. But what does this mean for global climate accountability? Is Taiwan off the hook for curbing carbon emissions? Nope.
In April 2021, President Tsai Ing-wen declared that Taiwan has set a goal to be carbon net zero by 2050, joining the ranks of many nations around the world. But unlike many nations, the current policy also aims to make Taiwan a non-nuclear nation.
Korea is going to 30% nuclear. Japan's going to 20%. And the European Union just declared nuclear power is green energy. So we can review this every day, very often, so we feel comfortable, but don't make decisions now. Nuclear is bad, let's shut it down. Unfortunately, that was the case a few years ago.
Can a nation attain carbon net zero while going non-nuclear?
During Taiwan's 2016 presidential election campaign, she pushed for a 2025 non-nuclear Taiwan. Upon entering the office and the support of the legislative branch, in 2017, the requirement to remove nuclear plant as a source of Taiwan's energy production was written into law. However, in 2019, the line on removing nuclear energy was removed from the law after a national referendum opposing Tsai's plan passed in 2018. Despite that, nuclear reactors are going offline as previously scheduled, and no nuclear reactors are being built. Currently, Taiwan technically has 4 nuclear reactors, with 1 decommissioned, 2 currently in operations, and 1 that never turned on. They're commonly referred to by the order in which they're built: nuclear 1, 2, 3, and 4. Nuclear 4 was the one that never turned on. Quick story about Nuclear 4, or Roman Nuclear Power Plant. This is a photo of me as my family was preparing to go on the streets to protest the plant. This was the year 2000. In 2014, 14 years later, the protests are still happening. And if you're wondering if I had an opinion about nuclear energy back in 2000, of course not. I was 10 years old. The only nuclear thing I knew was the nuclear bomb. Alright, back to nuclear energy in Taiwan. As of making this video, all plants will stop operations in 2025, with the last reactor ending operations on May 17th, 2025. But is this reasonable as Taiwan heads for a 2050 carbon net zero plan, or will Taiwan run into an energy crisis? Nuclear power has always been a hot topic. While there's no carbon emissions, nuclear energy comes with nuclear waste. Apart from nuclear waste management, there's also a couple of major nuclear disasters and scares. The most notable one is Chernobyl, but a more recent reminder is the Fukushima nuclear disaster. While not as catastrophic as Chernobyl, Fukushima was a nuclear meltdown caused by the combination of a tsunami, poorly managed equipment, and a lack of testing on safety systems. After the disaster, then Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, turned from a proponent of nuclear energy to a major critic. 3 months after Fukushima, Merkel called for the immediate shutdown of 17 reactors in Germany and outlined a plan to decommission the remaining reactors by 2022. During this period, coal production had decreased from 293.2 terawatt hours to 162.6 terawatt hours. And the nation's energy had largely been subsidized by natural gas and renewable energies. As opposed to Germany's hard nuclear cutoff, France, the nation with the second largest number of nuclear reactors, only after America, agreed to continue using nuclear power, but only as part of the transition of the nation's eventual shift to majority renewable energy production. Both tactics are viewed as valid strategies, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 revealed a vulnerability in Germany's approach. Germany now relies on natural gas as a steady source of energy, and most of it is imported. In 2021, 55% of imported gas in Germany came from Russia. In a move the German government believes is politically motivated, the pipelines that supply Germany have been reduced to 20% capacity due to sanctions placed on Russia by the EU. Fearful of retaliations by high gas prices or even the possibility of cutting off the nation's natural gas supply completely, Germany launched a nationwide energy conservation initiative and decided to keep the last 3 remaining nuclear plants in operation. Germany's current plan is to decommission the remaining plants at the end of 2022 and early 2023. While some may argue that the two European nations' tactics to get to carbon neutrality are different, they're actually coming from a similar place in the grand scheme of things. By 2011, in Germany, renewables have already been on a steady rise in energy production shares and was therefore already slated to take over the helm from nuclear production. Alright, back to Taiwan. Ever since Taiwan's transition away from nuclear, while coal production has decreased, the percentage of natural gas burning has significantly increased. This led to an overall 15% increase in CO2 emissions, from 237 million tons to 273 million tons of CO2 from 2002 to 2018. Using Germany or France's tactics to achieve 2050 carbon net zero isn't really an adequate solution for Taiwan, as Germany and France's renewable energies were prepared to take on the challenge, whereas Taiwan really isn't. Taiwan's renewable energy sector is barely growing. Switching off nuclear power could lead to unstable energy productions. The nation's reliance on natural gas, while producing less greenhouse gases in comparison to burning coal, is still more than 10 times more carbon emission than nuclear or any source of renewable energy, and is therefore not classified as low carbon energy source. The only way to reliably get to carbon net zero is to heavily invest in renewable energy production sources like solar and wind. But Taiwan, being an island, holds a lot of problems for developing renewable energy.
Taiwan is an island. We cannot make solar cells all over the roofs of all the households and the mountains and all that. There's not enough land. And the wind power, we have to use a lot of ocean areas for the wind power. It can be done, but it's not very practical.
Since Taiwan's also a democracy with 4-year terms for both presidents and legislators, they need to keep energy prices cheap to avoid getting kicked out of office. China has also threatened to blockade Taiwan, which would also include natural gas imports. It also creates an urgent need for Taiwan to achieve energy independence. An ideal situation would be for the government to be on the same page to tackle this major issue. But politics, it's all about wedge issues. As long as one party is on one side of the issue, the other party is guaranteed to oppose it. Of course, the option to go back to nuclear power remains in the nation's back pocket. However, with Taiwan's frequent earthquakes, the safety of the plants is also a major issue in everyone's minds, not to mention the nuclear waste.
A few years ago, Korea said zero, Japan said they're going to shut down all the power. They all start up again. Even German, they start up their 2 nuclear power plants. Now, French is working on the 4th generation power plant, nuclear power plants, but they ran out of budget, so kind of suspended yet. But then the bigger concern on the power plant was the waste, how to deal with the waste. But the new generation power plant actually greatly reduced the amount of waste. So we should constantly reviewing the technology development.
So what is your country's strategy to achieve carbon net zero? What do you think is the best and most practical option going forward? Subscribe for more Taiwan stories. I'll see you around.